Look, I had another vid planned for this week, but something more important came up and this couldn't wait. We gotta do this right now. This is my top 10 Kwaito songs of all time. Cross rhythm. Let's go. At number 10, we have Manyonyo by Brothers of Peace, B.O.P. This is off their 2005 King of Kwaito Uyagaula album. Oscar Mdlongwa, aka Oskido, and Bruce Sebitlo, aka Dope, have been the long-standing members of this group. Over the years, we have had other members come and go. Don Laga being one of the founding members of B.O.P. who later on left. And on this project, we find Dr. Macheu being the third member. Later on, Dr. Macheu leaves to go and join TKZ family. B.O.P. are very important to Kwaito music. They've also been very important in the Afro house space. We can't forget Oskido church grooves that had a really good run throughout the early 2000s. And not forgetting, B.O.P. also gave us Kalawa Jasmine. Kalawa Jasmine, the legendary record label. From that label, we had Mafigizolo, Black Motion, DJ Zinhle, Big Nas, and many, many more legendary artists came out of this camp. So my number 10 is Manyonyoba by Brothers of Peace. It's a great song, and what B.O.P. stands for in Kwaito music is legendary. My number 9, Torio, Torio. Torio by the late Lebo Mandoza, whose career was cut short in a tragic car crash in 2006. Torio is off her intro EP back in the year 2000. The beginning of the song Torio, you hear that legendary intro.
Right about now.
That's a sample of Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock's 1988 hit song, It Takes Two. It takes two to make things go right. It takes two to make it out of sight. No, no, no. Lebo was known for her dyed hair. A lot of people compared her to the late Brenda Fassie. She had two runs. First one was with Boom Shaka, which was her and Tembi. And later on, she had a very successful solo career. We had a lot of standout tracks from Lebo. Some of my favorites being Doza Bantu, Free, and I'll Trade $1 Million. That's the one featuring Keith Sweat. There were two versions. There was one with Lil Mo, and there was another one with her. I enjoyed the one that was with her. Torio is a classic sounding Kwaito song. I want to take this time to give a special shout out to all the females that have been in the Kwaito space. Tembisite of Boom Shaka, Tlatlanqiza of Mafigizolo, Tandiswa Mazwi of Bongo Muffin, and any other females that I may have left out. We recognize your input in a very male-dominated field. This is where we give you your flowers. At number 8, we have Sikia Ngengoma. Trompies. Sikia Ngengoma, also the name of their 1995 debut album, Sikia Ngengoma. I remember as a kid watching this. This was fresh. This was new to me. I had never seen anything like this. I was like, well, you mean they can be a bunch of guys singing the same thing at the same time? They were performers. Those guys were performers. They were not only artists, but they were dancers too. The group originally comprised of Spikiri, Mahuta, Donald Duck, Jakarumba, and Mjokes. They all grew up together in Soweto and formed the band Trompies. Two of them went on to have very successful music careers. Spikiri, who some of you are familiar with. Spikiri gave us the hit song Vat and Set in the early 2000s. And DJ Mahuta has a very extensive catalog. I could be here all day explaining to you guys who DJ Mahuta is. For those of you who are not familiar with DJ Mahuta, I suggest you do your Googles. He's a whole legend living out here. Number 7. You really had to get down on this one. You needed good knees because you had to like go. It's in the knees, like it's all in the knees. It's the knees on this one. Number 7, Kuqangamadolo by Mzegezege. This is off the 2004 album Kuqangamadolo. Signature overalls. This man had a black pillowcase over his head to hide his identity. Look, I'm pretty sure we're all aware at this point that it was DJ Swoop behind that mask. Mzegezege was known for adding comedic elements to his music, Sure, he was not the first prior to this to add comedy to his music. Dr. Macheu, Doc Shebeleza, and Senyaka were also known to do the same. Senyaka gave us the hit Chisampama with DJ Walker. Chisampama? So Mzege Zege was not the first person to do this, but what pushes Mzege Zege to the front of the line was that he hid his face the whole time being in character, but his personality still was at the forefront. And also, Mzege Zege came from the legendary TS record label camp. We had a lot of legendary artists to come out of that camp. We had Brown Dash, the late Pro Kid Upro. They gave us one of my favorite Posse Cut Kwaito track of all time. That is Nihamba Pansi, the remix by Mzege Zege. That one had everyone. If you can get your hands on it, go check it out. Number 6, tatiskupu, usfake zozweni. Okay, number 6, Tatiskupu by Bongo Muffin. This is off their 1998 sophomore album, The Concerto. Bongo Muffin remind me a lot of the Fugees in that they have 3 members. The 3 members bring different elements to the music like the Fugees. And their first album didn't make much noise, exactly like the Fugees. Tatiskupu was their Killing Me Softly song. By that I mean, just like the Fugees, we weren't paying attention to Bongo Muffin till we heard Tatiskupu. They had actually already been around. They just managed to catch one with Tatiskupu. From then on, they were out of here with other great albums. The group consists of Tandiswa, Johnny Appleseed. Back then, we had Uspidi, who left and had a solo career, and Stone. This was not the first time where we had different elements of raga, R&B, and some rapping. You know, Boom Shaka, I would say, did that first. Bongo Muffin perfected it. I hate to compare the two people. We have to give Boom Shaka their respect. So Boom Shaka walked so that Bongo Muffin could run. I think that's a great way of explaining it. Tiki Tiki Yo! Tiki Tiki Yo, my number 5. Godfather of Kwaito music, dumasilela. When we are talking about influence on culture, he's the poster boy of what Kwaito music is. This guy lives and breathes. He is the culture. I mean, that's why he's called the godfather of Kwaito music. And it comes as no surprise. If you go and look on Ranker, best 90s Kwaito artist dumasilela is number 1. Ranker is just a random site where people get to vote. This song is legendary. It comes as no surprise that in 2014, Duncan and AKA with Mdu redid Tiki Tiki Yo. Number 4, this has gotta be the most aggressive song. You just wanna flip a table. Whenever I hear Juembe, I always wanna flip a table. It's a very aggressive song. Number 4, Juembe by Zola. This is off his 2000 project, Juembe, which means problem child. In order for you to understand why Zola is my number 4, or for you to understand who Zola is, you have to understand the landscape of Kwaito music throughout the 90s, okay? Because Zola came around in the 2000s. Kwaito music, up until the arrival of the Juembe album, it was dance music. It was very happy music. It was music that was played at parties, okay? But one thing to note is a lot of these artists came from the townships, and in those townships, they had their own social issues that needed addressing. Fast forward 2000, we get Juembe, and Zola turns the industry upside its head with this album. This guy is just telling these very vivid stories, these graphic stories at times. A lot of comparisons were made to DMX, which are not far off, with Zola painting pictures of a man who, even though religion is his guiding force, he still has one foot in the streets. I think a lot of the hip-hop, SA hip-hop, Zola has been very impactful to SA hip-hop in regards to, you know, just simple things like, I had never heard cussing on Kwaito records till Zola shows up. I mean, some of those skits, they were intense, you know, but that's his story. You know, who am I to judge somebody's story. He's putting his story on wax. These are things that people actually do experience. Zola's mix of Kwaito with hip-hop sensibilities has inspired the likes of Cuesta, OK Malum Cool Cat, and Casper Nyovest, to name a few. It comes as no surprise that we get Zola on 2 features on Casper Nyovest's 2020 Any Minute Now project. Number 3, Benny's in the 18 area, TKZ in the area, halagasha. Shibobo by TKZ. This is off their 1998 sophomore album, Shibobo. They actually had an album before this, didn't really make a lot of waves. They come out with Shibobo in 1998. Another very influential group in Kwaito music. When TKZ came around, it was a run, man. It was a run. There were a couple of things TKZ should be recognized for. The first one being TKZ started branching away from that slowed down house sound, and they started just anything and everything they would sample, they could get their hands on. I mean, Shibobo, when you hear it, the sample is Europe's Final Countdown. On Ipola Letu, this is a later album, they're sampling a Bollywood-sounding song. They took a Johnny Clegg hook from that one. Fiasco, I'm not quite sure where they got the sample, but it's a very Latin-sounding sample. There were just no rules. And that year in 1998, they gave us the album Shibobo, and they came around and hit us with Halloween. 2 classic albums in 1 year. They went on to create TKZ Family, where Dr. Macheu joins them. We also have Loiso, who comes on the scene after that. The group consists of Zwei Bala, Tokolo, Kabelo. All went on to have great solo careers. The standout solo career being Kabelo's. Kabelo had this phenomenal run in the early 2000s. I mean, look, Pansula for Life, Zonke, Amasheleng, Reverse Yomhlaba. Kabelo's catalog is very consistent. He always made good music. That run throughout the early 2000s was phenomenal. Kabelo's a legend. And he looks like Jada Kiss. Come on now. You can't tell me that guy doesn't look like Jada Kiss. They look alike. And another thing to definitely note is that once TKZ came around, there was a lot of international interest that came with it. Their music was very relatable to people outside of South Africa from that point on. Number 2, Nkalagata. That's my number 2 on my list, by the late Mandoza with Nkalagata. This was the first song where white people finally were like, all right, we get this digong thing. Isigubu. Nkalagata had this crossover appeal. If you are too young to understand, think of how big Jerusalem is by Master KG. That is how big Nkalagata was. We didn't have internet back then, but it would play out of every person's car growing up. Mandoza was Kwaito music's first rock star. His raspy vocals, that was not the norm back then. Now it is, you have the Cuestas, the Holy Tens, this pop smoke phenomenon, as I call it. There's a lot of technology now to make your voice sound raspy. But back then, that was not the norm. That was not the norm. That was his natural voice. I don't know how many packs of cigarettes he smoked a day, but man, he was definitely Kwaito music's first rock star. And my number 1, it's Arthur with that one song, I Can't Say It. The K word, folks. I do have another video where I define Kwaito music, and I do mention that same song. I mention its significance to the genre, which is why it is the number 1. This was the first song that became a hit in SA and really brought Kwaito music to the mainstream. I mean, the longevity that Arthur Mafokate has. Okay, the K Word was a single, it wasn't on an album. His career spans through 2 decades. through the 90s and the 2000s. I hope you guys realize that Haibo and Mnige were made in the mid 2000s. That came as a surprise to me. The fact that he started in 94 and continued. I hope he owns his masters. And I think he does. So if he does, he's set for life. Look, because even after years to come, oh my gosh, like a lot of songs. I could be here all day going through songs, hit after hit. This guy was a hit making machine. Started off as a dancer, for those of you who don't know. Didn't really want to be in the front, kind of had to warm up to it. And man, he really came into his own. He's a great performer. There's another important aspect that Arthur Mafokate has in the culture, and that is the beginning of 999, the record label. With 999, there were a lot of legendary. Arthur put a lot of people on, guys. Whether it's Makentlas, Abashante, New School. If you guys remember New School. Some say Arthur is the king of Kwaito. I don't really have an opinion on that, but I'm not mad at that if you say that. There's a lot of good points. You do have a case by saying that. The K word. Arthur, number one. I gotta put 2 more honorary spots on this list. And Ismail would be 11. Ismail gave us Roba Litega, are you kidding me? And number 12, you gotta put Tebe, man. Tebe contributed a lot in Kwaito music. When we're talking about like that mega party, feel good. I mean, he gave us Bula Boot. Come on now. Tebe gave us Bula Boot. Yeah, it was hard. It was very hard putting this list together because I had so many people who probably should be in the top 10 list. So that's it, folks, my top 10 list. Also a special shout out to Andile Songo, who was the inspiration to this list. Shout out to you, Ndi. Had a lot of fun doing this one. What are some of your favorite Kwaito memories? Let me know what your top 10 list is. And look, if anyone comes up with a really good list, I will update this list. We'll make another one. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's continue the discussion in the comments.